We need scarcely say that all the paths of the mountain were known to Vampa. He therefore went forward without a moment's hesitation, although there was no beaten track. But he knew his path by looking at the trees and bushes, and thus they kept on advancing for nearly an hour and a half. At the end of this time, they had reached the thickest part of the forest. A torrent, whose bed was dry, led into a deep gorge. Vampa took this wild road, which, enclosed between two ridges, and shadowed by the tufted umbrage of the pines, seemed, but for the difficulties of its descent, that path to Avernus of which Virgil speaks. Teresa had become alarmed at the wild and deserted look of the plain around her, and pressed closely against her guide, not uttering a syllable. But as she saw him advance with even step and composed countenance, she endeavored to repress her emotion. Suddenly, about 10 paces from them, a man advanced behind a tree and aimed at Vampa. "Not another step," he said, "or you are a dead man." "What, then?" said Vampa, raising his hand with a gesture of disdain, while Teresa, no longer able to restrain her alarm, clung closely to him. "Do wolves rend each other?" "Who are you?" inquired the sentinel. "I am Luigi Vampa, shepherd of the San Felice farm." "What do you want?" "I would speak with your companions who are in the glade at Rocco Bianca." "Follow me, then," said the sentinel. "Or, as you know your way, go first." Vampa smiled disdainfully at this precaution on the part of the bandit, went before Teresa, and continued to advance with the same firm and easy step as before. At the end of 10 minutes, the bandit made them a sign to stop. The two young persons obeyed. When the bandit thrice imitated the cry of a croak answered the signal. Well, little Luigi Vampa's got a little pep in his step, doesn't he? He's moving about with some confidence. Is this because he knows the mountains and the forest and the pathways? Or is he stepping into his role as a villain here? Does he have a plan? Does he know what he's doing, seeking out these bandits? I don't know. We will find out, I suppose, in the next episode or two. However, let's talk a little Greek mythology. And no, this isn't a plug for my other show, Odyssey, a daily Odyssey through Homer's The Odyssey and more. No, we actually get Roman mythology here with the metaphor that as they are moving through the forest and the paths, the difficulties of its descent, that path to Avernus of which Virgil speaks. Well, Avernus in the Aeneid is essentially a pathway or an entrance to the underworld. That seems like a pretty foretelling metaphor to be using. Vampa is literally leading himself and Teresa into the underworld. Although, interestingly, in mythology, the underworld is not necessarily seen as hell the way that other religious texts depict it. The underworld just kind of being a physical place where those who have passed on reside. We're not talking Dante's Inferno or anything like that. But it still was a place of darkness and dark fate. So the metaphor still holds water, but it's not like he's entering the fiery pits of hell here. Or maybe he is. Okay, but before we move on from discussing this mythological reference, I think it's worth mentioning two things based on things we've already discussed. One is that allusions to myth, mythical metaphors, this was something that Romantic authors used a lot, actually, as a way of expressing something more than what the story's entailing. Connecting it to something larger, something expressive. We talked a bit in chapter 32, or maybe it was 31, about the Romantic movement and how it is standing in opposition to or in contrast to the Enlightenment movement, which was about logic and reason, Romanticism about expression, melodrama, heightened emotions, complexities. I think the use of mythological metaphor is a very easy way, because the texts are rich when you're talking about mythological comparisons. I mean, you could pull geographical, you can pull from the fables, Ovid, Virgil, Homer, Apollodorus, Plutarch. I mean, there's so many that you can call upon to be able to find the exact mythological metaphor that suits your exact situation to express something a little bit bigger. The other thing I want to mention about this, though, is not the mythological context, but just the way that Dumas, and I don't know that this can be attributed directly to Romantic authors, but the way Dumas specifically uses these kind of thresholds as a way of character transformation. We think of Dante in the tunnels, or being wrapped up in Faria's burlap sack and being thrown into the ocean. There's the threshold of leaving the prison was a major transformation for him. The threshold of entering into the treasure cave for the first time was a major transformation for him. Entering the prison for the first time was a major transformation for him. So Dumas uses this as a way of indicating that we are passing a point of no return psychologically, in addition to the physical location. I guess you could say that about Franz, too, when he enters Dante's cave and takes hashish being that trip being a kind of physiological and psychological threshold that he crosses, though he does not seem entirely transformed to me at this point. But I guess we need to give him a little more time before we make that decision. Okay, I'm going to end that here today. We have 2 more episodes. Oh my goodness, folks. Tomorrow is the penultimate episode of Chapter 33. Holy moly. We did it. We almost did it. We're almost there. But join me here then while we do what we do every day, and that's read a passage of the Count of Monte Cristo. So until then, okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.